You are now tuned in to The Daily Dose, a daily podcast produced by the Minority Cannabis Business Association, focused on trending headlines in the cannabis industry and how they will affect minority entrepreneurs who are risking it all to make the jump from the legacy market into the regulated cannabis industry. If you support an equitable cannabis industry, then you're an ally of MCBA, and we want you to join the movement for a better tomorrow. Now sit back and relax. We've got your Daily Dose loading up. Special shout out to this month's sponsor of the show, Indiva Advisors. You can check them out at indivaadvisors.com. They are a leading accounting firm dedicated to the cannabis industry. They navigate complex tax, financial, and regulatory changes to make sure that your business is compliant and efficient. They focus on you so you can focus on your business. You can check them out at indivaadvisors.com. That's INDIVA advisors.com. Now we'll get right into today's headlines and today's Daily Dose.
All right, what's up, everyone? It's Precious, MCBA Communications Manager, and welcome to our 29th episode of The Daily Dose. And as you guys see here, I have a new face with us, or our co-host for today, if you will, and newly appointed MCBA board member. I want to say what's up to Frederica Easley. What's up, Frederica?
Hey. What's up, lady?
What's up? Thank you so much for joining us. We are going to talk about something a little spicy today. I call it spicy because things coming out of New York are just spicy. Like, it's not what we've seen before. It's always something random or like a new thing to do, a new something. But before we get into that, you just came on to MCBA board. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
I want people to know a little bit about you, though, what you've been doing, how you found yourself in this space. I know cannabis people, I call us like mini superhumans because we all do multiple things at once. So just give us the whole rundown.
Yeah, real talk. First of all, I love the intro music. It's like lo-fi, you know what I mean? Like perfect to work, to study, to do whatever. And Kaliko is up here sounding like he want to be a VJ for Midnight Love. So,
for sure.
Shout out to the intro. Frederica McClary Easley. I am from Buffalo, New York. Reside in a crazy state of Texas right now. That is all over the place in terms of regulations, really limited, only with medical. Spent a decade and a half in labor. So working for the second largest labor union, where I did internal, external organizing, strategic campaigns, coast to coast, task force, community building, in terms of different groups, coalitions, things of that nature. And so bring all that into the cannabis space. And so, this is my third year now with the People's Ecosystem, which is a brand out of Oakland, business out of Oakland, that is led by women of color, Latinx descent, also LGBTQIA. And so I am the director of strategic initiatives. And so I analyze policy, rules, and regs specifically with the lens of equity. So I'm looking at areas, looking at language where it can be strengthened and where it may intentionally or unintentionally, repurpose harm, right? We know in this space is just a microcosm of everything that we deal with daily. Like all of our systems are systemically racist, right? Institutionally racist. And the cannabis industry is following in that path, right? So it's like an uphill battle to make sure that, we are active, we are engaged, we are weighing in every step of the way to try and make sure that that does not happen, right? Because we missed it with alcohol, we missed it with tobacco, you know what I'm saying? We missed it with oil. So this is our opportunity, like Black, Latinx, Indigenous people. This is our opportunity to kind of get in, you know what I mean? And to make sure that the actual culture of cannabis is not lost as we regulate, right? Like as we legalize this whole thing and follow along that journey. So that's what I do. I'm super excited about being on the board of MCBA, and just being a part of that movement of trying to elevate the voices and organize and advocate. So thank you for having me.
No, honestly, shout out to you, because even just hearing what you do on the daily, like that role is so important, because I don't think people understand like what you meant by we are actively breaking down a system. And that in and of itself, it's almost like you are doing a lot more. It's not just, oh, we're trying to change one rule here. It's literally changing a systemic sort of integration on how people live, how things came to be, and looking to reverse that. And it's so many ways to do it. And it really is a collaborative effort, but everyone doing their part. And I always say, you know, to be in this industry, you just have to be an advocate. Like, it's just no one or the other. Like, you can't just come and be like, cool, I'm about to open up. Like, open up, and we got folks, brothers and sisters still in jail, and you just like, cool, you know? So definitely appreciate you for your work. And with that, now it's time to go in and pick your brain. So today we are talking about the Big Apple. What else would we be what else would we be talking about these days? So a lot of you might have heard some recent headlines over just the last couple of days. New York City officials are basically looking to sue landlords who are allowing the sale of illicit cannabis in those, you know, pot shops and stuff like that. A lot of you guys know I'm from the East Coast. I'm about 30 minutes from the city, and I can tell you, New York has always been the largest legacy market, period. And I don't think anyone said to themselves there's a switch to turn it off as soon as the regulated market comes online. And New York, I would give it to them. They've been really trying to allow legacy operators to transition, but we all know that transition is easier said than done. You know, there's so many barriers to come into this industry, so many barriers to be an operator. The capital is needed, the lawyers needed, the regulations you need to understand, the red tape, the political side of things, you know, come into play, going up against larger companies. There isn't really no big sunshine over the rainbow for a lot of legacy operators to say, well, this is for me, in New York especially. So I'm dropping an article in the comments. I'm going to read a couple sentences, and then Frederica, I want to get your thoughts on just this strategy to sort of limit the legacy market, and just talk about if we've seen this before in other states. I haven't necessarily seen it before. Maybe it has been done, and maybe what is the some things we can think about to transition folks who are in the legacy market to the regulated space. And so it goes like this. In a renewed push to snuff out New York City's thriving illegal cannabis market, Mayor Eric Adams and Manhattan's top prosecutors announced on this last Tuesday, that they would go after landlords who allow hundreds of illicit shops to operate. It was during a news conference. They said that they sent notices to more than 400 smoke shops that are illegally selling cannabis, warning them of potential evictions. We know for sure that they have issued out 4 lawsuits already to 4 different entities who had proceeded in selling cannabis illegally there, now that it's a regulated market. So we're looking to see what those turn out. And they really were able to find out about these shops because the city had sent in decoy sort of folks, undercover folks, some who were under 21, and they were able to purchase these marijuana products. So they're going to use that. I'm not sure how. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not sure if this is like evidence, when you can't really, are you incriminating me by like not telling me stuff, but they're using that as the basis. For those who are familiar with New York, thus far, there's been 66 licenses issued of the first round of 175 licenses expected to be issued. New York right now has about 3 dispensaries open. It's a slow rollout. It's not what everyone expected. They had this big, luxurious, we're going to have like 20, 30 shops open by end of 2022. This $200 million fund would be there to, have that turnkey operation for retailers. We talked about that. We're watching New York literally just go haywire sometimes when it comes to this build out. But they've also been pretty ambitious when it comes to, focusing on social equity, focusing on the Black and Brown community. But I've always said it's the execution is just might not just always be there. So Frederica, what do you think of this news, this tactic to sort of, eradicate the legacy market, illicit market. Everyone has a different name for it, in order to, bring on the regulated space.
So real quick for clarity, just want to point out one thing. There are essentially 3 different spaces in New York, and I'm sure this exists in other places. Definitely like DC, I'm sure Jersey has it as well. But you have the regulated, right? So these are like car licensees or medical operators in New York. You have the gray market, right? That's the market that cease and desist letters have been sent out to, right? So these are people who actually have, whether they are the food truck kind of situation, or they have brick and mortars where they've set up shop and they are, illegally selling cannabis products. And then you have the traditional legacy operators, right? And those are people who are underground, right? Like those are people, that's your weed man. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to to state that, because these folks who have brick and mortar, to your point about, trying to transition legacy operators, it's like, these are not like your legacy operators coming above ground essentially and taking on overhead costs, right? So you go from being able to operate with little overhead, getting your product however you doing it, to actually like owning a store, like having to pay rent or having to, pay a mortgage on a physical location. So this is not them. So that's the first thing. Like, I want to be clear about that. In terms of the transitioning of legacy operators, New York is trying to be very intentional about prioritizing that, and creating that space. The MRTA was definitely clear on that intent, and the regulators are trying to move forward with it. But there are some key components missing, right? Like, one is, we're not talking about amnesty. What incentive would there be for me to come from being able to keep a huge portion of my profits?
Yeah.
Okay.
No 280E.
No 280E, not having to deal with all of this, like testing, all of this compliance, like all of this stuff, like basically being able to be my own boss and handle things in the way in which I see fit. Like, where are the incentives for legacy operators to actually transition into the regulated space? I'm not really hearing that. I'm not really seeing that.
Yeah.
So to get to the point, right? I just wanted to kind of like put that context out there. But to get to the point of this article, look, it's not easy, right? And nothing is easy, right? So New York is really trying to make sure that it doesn't make mistakes that other states like California, Colorado, whatever, that they have made. New York feels like California did not take its illicit market serious enough. They didn't crack down on them. And to a certain degree, I feel them, right? Because as you're giving these licenses out, this is competition, right? Like these gray market, setups are competition. And so you're trying to figure out how to deal with it. I don't think it's going to be an easy fix. I think one of the complications I see with this is that real estate is already a problem. And you can, I mean, like, this, right? Like, because you're a cannabis business operator, right? And so you understand how hard it is to even find a location that, first of all, meets zoning requirements.
Perfectly zoned.
Right. And then to find a landlord that's not basically trying to like rake you over the coals in terms of the cost. And so I can see some landlords who would be like, you know what? I'm just not renting to anyone. Like, I don't understand what's going on. Until this thing is federally legal, I'm just not going to rent to anyone, because I don't want to have the responsibility, right? Like, I don't want to be held responsible to this degree. There are others that are going to be like, you know what? I'm just going to up my costs so that I have a safety net for if you are not doing what you're supposed to do. Because again, I don't want to be responsible for like checking on you like that. And so in the event that you're not doing what you're supposed to do, at least I have, this money over here on the side that I can use to get myself out of trouble. So, I understand what New York is trying to do at this point. It's like trial and error, like they're trying to figure it out. Right. So we have to allow some grace for that. But they also have to make sure that they can pivot when harm is being caused, excuse me, that's unintentional, but that outweighs the benefits of whatever they originally were trying to get.
Right. And honestly, and I appreciate that point too, with the breakdown of the regulated gray and legacy market. And that's something I think we need to talk about more in this space in general to distinguish the three. But also, I really also think it's because of the safety concern and compliance concern. Not too long ago, New York also, through their decors or operations to go and see where a lot of this gray market cannabis is coming from, they found mold, they found different sorts of items in those products that were unsafe to consume. And really, I think that's also one of the biggest, at least that's why I also transitioned into the regulated market, was because of that safety. And even then, we all love our women. We want to support them and everything of that nature. We understand the war on drugs, but there's always that little bit of, I hope this is quality product. I hope someone ain't mix up the batch or whatever the case is. And that luxury is not afforded in that gray and legacy market all the time, unless, there's some legacy operators that kind of got that down too and can assure you and provide those assurances. But essentially, that's what the regulated market does. And I believe that's one of the main initial points of really trying to, like you said, put a handle on it before, you set up the regulated market. And like you said, ain't nothing's happening. The tax dollars aren't going there. So then you can't then reallocate those money to those impacted communities. You can't do a lot of the things you said you're doing because there's that active competition on from the gray and illicit market versus the regulated side. And then honestly, I do think it's interesting. The thing about the landlord situation, New York geography is crazy. Even with how they're trying to situate, there's an injunction right now, even blocking some of the licenses going to certain places. So we're watching. Exactly. We're watching where some of these shops are coming up online. And, New York had the promise to be able to provide these properties. And they're still, even from in-house, Dasney is still trying to get it together to have these turnkey operations because they have to work with landlords. I've always said that landlords have been like the little specific sort of small winners in the cannabis industry because either which way it goes, they're kind of set up. So how do you think landlords are responding to these, to this strategy New York is doing? Do you think they need to hurry up and roll it out, tell all their tenants, cut it out, prepare them to probably go through a regulated space? What do you think the landlords in this position are probably doing, thinking, or should do?
Well, first of all, landlords have the leverage, right? I remember when Dasney, when it was first announced that they were going to have these 150 turnkeys, and it was going to be based on this $200 million fund. Now, I'm from Buffalo, New York, right? So I'm from Western New York, Finger Lakes. That is a total different landscape than the city, than the boroughs, right? But I was just like, 200 million is not enough. You know what I mean? I don't know how y'all are going to do this. 200 million for 150 locations is not enough. And especially when, and I think this is where they kind of bit off a little more than they could chew. There was this idea that, we're coming in and we're going to be the middleman, right? So we're negotiating and the landlords are going to be more lenient or they're going to be more receptive to us. And the landlords are like, no, I want this money. You know what I'm saying? I don't care who coming. I don't care how this goes. I want the money. And so I think that we're going to consistently see that where even in this instance, like I said, the landlords there are going to be some who are thinking about how do I make this work for me? Right. So how do I minimize my loss and maximize my black, right? The potential of this opportunity. And so I think that whereas you had some landlords initially claiming charging like exorbitant prices and claiming that they were worried about like the federal government coming down on them. Now this is real.
Yeah.
Right? Now this is real. Now this is, oh, I can actually be held accountable for what you do or what you don't do. And I don't think landlords are going to keep it in this pretty box in terms of, oh, do you have a car? Like, do you have a license or do you not? I think that they're going to associate this with compliance or associate this with other issues. And that's what I'm saying. Like, it can be a slippery slope in terms of how this winds up, how the landlord-tenant relationship is impacted because of this.
Yeah.
And that's where like New York has to be ready to pivot, to try something new, and to continue along the road of trying to figure it out.
Right. And like we mentioned earlier, there are 4 lawsuits right now against 4 landlords for locations that had been doing this. So I also think it's kind of like a scared straight tactic.
Yeah.
Like, all right, you see these 4 right here as like, the ones that's being put up there and now have to go through litigation, get lawyers, figure it out. And they're really putting this all under a lot of like the nuisance and mitigation laws of New York. And especially now the new regulated rules that came out that literally says you cannot do this. So I think it will send a loud message. I think this is actually one of the clearest messages it sent when it came to looking to tell that gray marketish area, you can't do this. But again, I'm wondering if this is also a reverse scare tactic for legacy operators who now are even going to feel even more uncomfortable with trying to figure out a way to transition into a regulated space. And, MCBA, that's a lot of where we try to touch on, even via policy, offer our opinion, support, and expertise on how we can get more Black and brown folks to be a part of this industry rather than ostracize or miss out, like you said, from a lucrative opportunity to be at the beginning of industry, which a lot of us don't get to see in a lifetime. So with that, I really appreciate you, Frederica. Do you have any last thoughts on this?
Just one quick thing to your point about legacy operators. A part of a legacy operator being to stay in business is to, like, their word is their bond, right? Like, I think back to American Gangster when he's like, people know Blue Magic, like Sheriff and General Mills, like they know when they get this box, this is what it is. And so I actually think that like traditional legacy operators are all about like testing or all about quality product. Like those are not your people who are trying to put bad stuff out there. Why? Because their business is based on like word of mouth and is based on
credibility.
Credibility is based on quality, right? So it really is this gray market, right, that does not operate under the same street code, right? Like they're not really operating with that kind of understanding. And so I think you're absolutely right. Like we have to figure it out. I don't know that it's going to be easy. And I think legacy operators are going to continually think, why would I even come over here? You know what I'm saying? Like,
I know that's what I would think too. Shoot. And I remember laughing with somebody when the New York rules came out. It was like, yeah, come on, legacy operators. If you can prove that you've been in the legacy market, we got you. And I'm like, so you mean to tell me they're gonna show up with like what they Venmo receipts and be
that's what I'm saying. Like, so I'm coming to you, and like I'm coming out, right? I'm coming to you. Now you about to ask me where all this money is from,
right?
There's no guarantee I get to use my funds, right? Without them being taxed, without us, without being subjected to 280E. And I don't know how far back you're going to want to go. Then in terms of my product, okay, now it's going to cost me because I got to get all this tested. I get it. We believe in testing. I'm all for it. But I'm just saying, now I got to deal with compliance. Now I got to deal with X, Y, and Z. I mean, again, where is the incentive? That's all I'm just saying, make it make sense. Where's the incentive? Because don't threaten me and say like, whoa, well, we're going to send the cops. Like I've been dealing with that.
Right. I've been averting them for years, for decades now. Bring them. Call them.
Like, what are we talking about? You know what I'm saying? Like y'all asked me to come here. Y'all didn't know. Y'all don't know me. Y'all didn't know anything about me. which means I've been doing a good job. So
Right.
this is not really a threat. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's like, you got to make it make sense for me. Like, why would I come out?
Exactly.
So I think that's what New York has to focus on. New York has to focus on, why would legacy operators want to transition? Like, what are the incentives? And the elephant in the room is that, like, the way these products are being taxed, this is partly why you have people going to the gray market or staying with their weed man, is because how much do you really think that people are going to pay for an eighth?
Okay. Pricing is a whole nother conversation on a whole look. New Jersey, and then compared to what we're seeing on the West now.
I mean, I just read an article that they were talking about in Cali. You can kind of get a pound now for like 400 because there is a imbalance with supply and demand.
Yep, there's a supply chain imbalance going on the West, where now we're even thinking about interstate commerce to be able to offset that. And I think that's the biggest fear that we're seeing on the East Coast now, because we're operating in the sense of like an unlimited, limited license area on the East Coast. Like right now, it's like come one, come all, but they're gonna start to carve around those caps as that supply chain hits its brink. And I think that's when we really have to look at what has happened on the West to be able to mitigate that, because you still want people to have opportunity. Hence why, again, it's very important that these barriers are lowered, so that now is when folks who are interested in participating can have that opportunity to shoot their shot. Because 5-6 years down the line, baby.
And it's a different game though, Precious, because like Cali has the outdoor advantage. They have the weather advantage, right? That East Coast doesn't necessarily have. So it's a whole different game, you know what I'm saying, in and of itself. And so I think the thing is that East Coast, we got to figure out what works for us. We just got to figure out what works for us.
Listen, it'll take time, which I've always been saying. I just felt like we need more time. We need to really flush things out. We need to understand who we're looking to support and impact the communities there too. But I love it, Frederica. I really hope you come back and host with me, girl, because this has been so much fun. There's so many articles, so much news coming out. Again, be on the lookout for Frederica with a lot of our MCBA programming we have coming on. And you guys know we have our small business education series next week. And we're actually going to be talking about new markets. We're going to talk about Maryland, New York, Missouri, and Connecticut. Just get a feel for those regulations. So if you haven't signed up, make sure you do. You can find that on our socials, and I'll also drop it again in the comments. All right, everyone, have a great Tuesday. Happy Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day. We'll check you guys later. Thank you guys for joining us. Bye.
Bye.